My grandfather was a first generation American. His father came from Poland. His father left Poland, misspelling the name rocket into Rekieta, a bastardized spelling of it. I have to blame my great grandpa. And then, no, not Jewish. I checked the ancestry thing. I was like, please let me be Jewish so I can just own a bank or a media company. No, I'm not fucking Jew. I wish. Jeez, you know how much easier life would be if you could just go to the rabbi and get yourself a free bank. Like none of that happened. So he leaves Poland. I don't even know when. Comes to US, can't spells her name wrong. And that's my grandpa. My grandpa is a first generation American, works his ass off as a handyman, an insurance salesman, whatever he could do. His offspring, my parents' generation, my dad's generation. So my aunt is a PhD in psychology. My uncle worked for Apple for 30, 35 years. If you own an Apple product, by the way, if you own an Apple product that uses Wi-Fi, my uncle is Paul Rekieta, who probably created at least the source code to allow your Apple devices to talk to anything else. That's my uncle. And then my dad, Robert Rekieta, worked for Cray for 35 years. So to go from an insurance salesman and handyman in Houston, Texas, who patched up holes, painted houses, hired Mexicans, to a PhD and two people who didn't need college degrees at the time they were hired, but you'd need them now to have the same jobs, who did pretty crazy things with software. And then now to a lawyer and asshole on YouTube, like the next generation. It's wild to see that happen in real time. And to think about what my great grandfather left in Poland to become American, to not only enter the industrial and then consumer economy, but then the post-consumer economy that I'm in. It's nuts to think about how that progression happened. You bought a Cray computer in 1994 from your father. I got a very traumatic moment. You did not buy a Cray computer in 1994, Art. You're not that rich. Don't even- He was also not a salesman. He was a software guy. But like the progression of leaving a country that is in turmoil and chaos. Cray computers were huge and took up whole caves and buildings. They still do, brother. They still make them. They're the size of a Walmart now. I've sat on. I remember the Cray 2, the one that had water in it, non-ionized water, so that it could sit in there and not short out all of the circuits. Um, the thing was like 4 feet tall. It was in the shape of a C. It was cool. Had a bunch of water in it. That's the Cray 2. It's probably about as strong as like a TI-89 graphing calculator today. They're embarrassing today. But when they came out in the 80s, they were monumental. And then the Cray YF2, I remember this thing coming out, which again would be less powerful than your average Xbox today. Like it's just a whole different thing. Nowadays, Cray computers aren't C-shaped anymore. They take an entire fucking Walmart. Like that's how big a Cray is. It's parallel processing in these server racks that have gone and it's just a whole warehouse full of these things. And now they do exascale computing. It's crazy what they do. It's basically a bunch of like uh processors and then a bunch of 4090s or whatever from NVIDIA, like just linked together to do these complex floating point calculations. That's what supercomputing is today. Um, but that's not always what it was. I remember when my dad he brought me home these what he used to do. He didn't do this at the end of his things, but what he used to do and what some of his colleagues used to do is so Cray stored data on tape drives and their clients stored data on tape drives. So they had these circular walls of tapes, and they had this robotic arm. So they go and it grab a tape and it go up and it put it in the slot. And then, it would read the data and then it would grab it and put it away. It was like a massive hard drive, but it took a little longer because it was these physical tapes that needed to be grabbed and put into a drive and then read, as opposed to a spinning disc. But I remember when my dad gave me 2 tapes. He gave me an old style tape. This is in To put it in perspective, this is about 1996. Okay. My dad gives me 1 tape and it is 900 megabytes in 1996. It's a big tape, about this big. It's about the size of VHS tape. 900 megabytes. And I am blown away. And then he gives me this other tape, which is a little smaller. It's black. It's a little different shaped. It's the new tape drive. And he says, this is 6 gigabytes of storage. Imagine in 1996 seeing 6 gigabytes of storage in a space that's this big. It was unbelievable if you know anything about like computing and storage. It's unbelievable. And he gave me these things because they were defective tapes, basically. And I was like, holy shit. Like these are amazing things. These are massive. They're so cool. This is what my dad did. And of course, now you look at them as like 6 gig. Who the fuck cares? I can put that on my dick. Like, why do I care about any of this stuff? But yeah, it was so cool. That's what he used to do. And then he used to deal with tape side software issues for the robots, I think, that would grab the tapes and shit like that and read them. But then he ended up doing software service on the server side later on. That's why he had to go to Brazil and Korea and all that stuff before he retired. He survived so many layoffs. I have no idea how to credit my dad enough with the fact that he was never complacent in his job. He always, 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 and this is a tough thing. He was always traveling when he had to. When we lived in Houston, he was traveling to Minnesota. We lived in Minnesota. He would travel to Brazil, Korea, other parts of the US, wherever he had to go. And he never, ever skipped out, as far as I know, on training and making himself indispensable to the company. And I remember my dad being stressed out through probably 20 to 25 layoffs throughout Cray's history. Cray got bought by SGI. SGI sold Cray back to Steve Cray. They sold to Hewlett Packard. All of these things happened. They sold their primary intellectual property to their main competitors, Sun Microsystems, while they were owned by SGI. It was one of the worst fucking things I've ever seen in my life. And my dad sitting there stressing out through all of these layoffs, going, I'm going to make myself the indispensable worker. I will do whatever it needs to do. I will do anything that I have to do to stay employed. And he did for 35 years. It's a different generation than we have now. Now, like your company starts getting sold and transferred and stuff, you go, fuck this. I'm going to go to another company. I'll make a parallel move. I'll probably get a raise, whatever, and do that. It's a different generation, man. A different generation with a different mindset and a different employment understanding than we have now. And I love the fact that he did that. I know he sacrificed a ton of time at home to do that. But he never made me feel like I wasn't important or anything. It was all about I have to do this for my family because I work for this company and I'm going to work for this company. There's always a concern. And thinking about that and the shit that he dealt with is like it's crazy to me now. It's crazy to me now. So that's the story of my dad. And the person he learned that from though was my grandpa. My grandpa was like an insurance salesman. So we have this thing. I think my dad still has it. I don't have it. It was a template insurance contract. And it was literally carved on a stone this thick. And a machine would slide ink over that stone and slap it down, right? It would slap that motherfucker down on a piece of paper and it would print that shit. It was like a printing press. There's this piece of stone. This 2 inches thick. It weighs way too much. It's super inefficient. But my grandpa, worked insurance sales for that long because he had to. Insurance sales aren't fun. It's a shitty job. Shitty job. But he did all that because that's what you had to do. And then on the side to supplement it, because I think my grandma worked in like an ad office or something, like a Mad Men or whatever, where everybody smoked like crazy. She she worked in some office or whatever, but he still had to do handyman work. He had to fix cars, he had to fix houses. And so that's what he did constantly. He never stopped. Is amazing to me. And the idea that we've got a generation of people who are allergic to work and allergic to finding what they do. I know people probably shit on me for my like habits and my job. I'm blessed with this YouTube job, Rumble job, whatever it is now, social media. I'm very, very blessed and I love it. But if I didn't have this and I had to, you bet your ass I would be at Walmart, McDonald's, wherever, because you have to work. That was instilled in me from the very get go. Eventually, you have to fucking work. And you don't get like some false pride. Well, I have a college degree. I have a law degree. No, you got to fucking work. When I first got out of college, I was supposed to have a bank job. The bank fucked up and hired someone else, even though they said they'd see me in a couple weeks. And I had to work at Target for a while. You just had to fucking do it. Like I worked in the stock room at Target overnights because I needed the $2 an hour boost. You have to just work. There is no, well, I don't wanna when you're a dad or a husband. You don't get to do those things. But yeah, again, it's a generational thing and you don't really see it as much, but my parents worked fucking hard, as hard as they could for a very long time. And I know that if all of this social media shit died tomorrow, I would work just as hard as they had to today because you have to. You have to work. They taught me to work. They taught me what work looks like, and they taught me that's not that fucking big of a deal. Get your ass out there and get to fucking work. Because you have to. You have a wife, you have kids. Get to work.